Today I'm going to walk through the National Association of Insurance Commissioners Buyer's Guide page by page and explain exactly what it means in plain English. This guide was created by insurance regulators to help consumers understand how annuities work, including the benefits, the limitations, and the trade-offs. This is not a sales presentation. There is no products being sold, and there's nothing for you to buy. The goal is simple: education. By the end of this video, you should have a much clearer understanding of what annuities are, how they work, and what questions matter before making a decision. If you want to follow along, I encourage you to download the Buyer's Guide directly from the NAIC and the description below. I'm Jeff McLeod. Let's get started. This is a newer Buyer's Guide we'll go over in another video. And the reason I want to go over this older version from 2007 is that it has an appendix for fixed index annuities. So I'm going to go through the first part very fast. We're on page 1. And hopefully you paused this and you've downloaded and printed the guide. And then we're going to go to the appendix. That's the exciting part. You're really going to enjoy that. Only an annuity. What is an annuity? Only an annuity can pay an income that can be guaranteed to last as long as you live. That word guaranteed is very serious and highly regulated. What are the different kinds of annuities? There are single premium annuities, multiple premium annuities, and flexible premium annuities. The word premium means insurance. You have car insurance premium, health insurance premium, life insurance premium. The dollars you put into an annuity are called premium. There are immediate annuities and deferred annuities. So the word annuity, A-N-N-U, means annual. I-T means stipend. So it means a perpetual blessing, or in Roman times, an annual income. A-N-N-U, annual, I-T, stipend. So you can get that monthly, quarterly, or semi-annually. And since the word immediate means income now and deferred means income later, it has nothing to do with taxes. Deferred annuities existed long before we even had a tax code in America. It just simply means income later. There are only two kinds of annuities: fixed and variable. See, fixed and variable. There is no in between. There is no such thing as a hybrid. It's black and white, night and day. There's fixed and variable. Fixed means fastened with guarantees, like a bolt. You fastened. And variable means the dollars can vary up and down with risk. Now let's go to what are surrender charges. Surrender charges are what enable the insurance company to be allowed to use the word guaranteed. The surrender charges are a known factor, and they decline and disappear over time. And on page 5, here are some of the different ways of receiving the definition of the word annuity, annual income. Actually, there's about 15 different ways to receive the definition of the word annual income in one annuity. In the middle, if you have an annuity, in the middle, there's all kinds of payout factors, joint life income, single life income, period certain with life. You need to take a look at those. Those are covered on page 5 of the Buyer's Guide. On page 7 of the Buyer's Guide are 21 questions you should ask when shopping for a fixed annuity. Is this a single premium or a multiple premium contract? That's very important. You want to know if you can add to it. See, the single premium means you can put dollars in one time and never again. Flexible premium means you can add anytime you like, and those are more flexible. And now the appendix. This is very exciting. Hang on with me. You're really going to enjoy this part. What are indexed annuities? So back in 2007, when the insurance commissioners wrote this guide, they used the word equity. Ever since then, in all literature and all material and Buyer's Guide since then, they've dropped the word equity and they're just called fixed indexed annuities. But the reason I wanted to go over this guide with you is they had to explain back then what are indexed annuities. And indexed annuity is a fixed annuity, either immediate, meaning income now, or deferred, income later, that earns interest So it's an interest rate vehicle, or provides benefits that are linked to an external reference or equity index. One of the most commonly used indices is the Standard & Poor's 500. When you buy an indexed annuity, you own an insurance contract. You're not buying shares of any stock or index. How are they different from other fixed annuities? An indexed annuity is different from other fixed annuities because of the way it credits interest to your annuity's value. Indexed annuities credit interest using a formula based on changes in the index to which the annuity is linked. The formula decides how the additional interest, if any, is credited to your annuity. How much additional interest you get and when you get it depends on the features of your particular annuity. Your index annuity, like other fixed annuities, also promises to pay a minimal interest rate. The minimum interest rate, you have two rates in an annuity. You have the current rate and a minimum guaranteed rate. That minimum guaranteed rate is set by your state insurance commissioner or state law. And a company cannot do business in your state unless they offer that minimum guaranteed rate. So you have current rates and minimum guaranteed rates. I'll explain how that works visually in just a moment. Now, there are three ways to make interest in an annuity. One is called a participation rate, a cap rate, and a margin, spread, or administrative fee of the interest. So there's only three ways, I'm going to show you that, to make interest: participation rate, cap rate, and a margin, spread, or administrative fee. A participation rate, let me read from the guide. The participation rate decides how much of the increase in the index will be used to calculate the index-linked interest. Remember, it's an interest rate vehicle. So, for example, if the calculated change in the index is 9% and the participation rate is 70%, your interest would be 6.3% credited interest. A cap rate in this example, and if the cap is 6%, you would be limited and make 6% interest and not 6.3%, as in the example with a participation rate. Now let's look at margin, spread, or administrative fee. I'm going to slow down and use voice inflection and pause. This needs a lot of attention. Margin, spread, or administrative fee. In some annuities, the index-linked interest rate is computed by subtracting a specific percentage from any calculated change in the index. This percentage, sometimes referred to as a margin, a spread, or administrative fee, might be instead of or in addition to a participation rate. For example, if the calculated change in the index is 10%, now they use an even number, your annuity might specify that 2.25% will be subtracted from the rate to determine the interest rate credited. In this example, the rate would be 7.75. So if the index goes up by 10 and you have 2.25% subtracted from the 10, that's 7.75. In this example, the company subtracts the percentage only if the change in the index produces a positive interest rate. So again, only if the change in the index produces a positive interest rate. Again, a margin, spread, or administrative fee is a computation to determine interest credited to the annuity. Back up at the top of page 11, it says the floor is the minimum index-linked interest rate that you'll earn. A 0% floor assures that even if the index-linked interest even if the indexed interest that you earn will be zero and not negative. Even if the index decreases in value, the index-linked interest that you earn will be zero and not negative. Let's have a look at that in here. But look at this last sentence on page 11. But in all cases, your fixed annuity will have a minimum guaranteed value. So there's two interest rates, a current rate and a minimum guaranteed rate set by state law. If you bought an index annuity here at the top of the market and linked it to the S&P 500 as mentioned in the guide, and the index goes down, and you make the 0% floor, and you pass away here with 0% interest credited to the annuity, then the insurance company is not allowed to pay you 0% interest. The minimum guaranteed interest required by state law kicks in. So it's always going to be the greater of the two, the minimum guarantee or the current interest rate that you earn from the annuity. Now let's go to page 12, annual reset. Here's how annual reset works, and back over here on page 10, the insurance commissioners use the words ratcheting. I mentioned that, but annual reset, ratcheting. Now let's go back and look at annual reset. Let's say you buy the annuity here and the index goes up. Your gains are locked in, vested, set, and can't be taken away. Now the index goes down and there's 0% interest credited if you're in an index strategy. And then it resets. It brings all of what you made here the first year and brings it down and resets and starts all over from the bottom up. That's called annual reset, and it really does work like a socket wrench. That's why the insurance commissioners use the word ratcheting. Now let's look at annual. Here's annual reset. Some interest earned is locked in annually, and the index value is reset at the end of each year. Future decreases in the index will not affect the interest you have already earned. Therefore, your annuity using the annual reset method may credit more interest than annuities using other methods when the index fluctuates up and down during the term. Like 2-year point-to-point versus annual reset. That's what the insurance commissioners are saying. This design is more likely than others. The insurance commissioners say this, and there's research to back that up. I'll show that in another video from the Wharton School of Business. This design is more likely than others to give you access to index-linked interest before the term ends. Now let's look at point-to-point. Annual point-to-point. Let's say the index begins here and the market goes down, the index goes down all year, and it shoots straight up over to the right-hand side of the ledger and ends here above where your beginning date began. So point-to-point is positive, and they would pay you a cap, a participation rate, or subtract a margin from the gain. That's called annual point-to-point. Averaging. I'm going to explain averaging on this chart. Averaging at the beginning of a term protects you from buying your annuity at a high point, which would reduce the amount of interest you might earn. Averaging at the end of the term protects you against severe declines in the index and losing index-linked interest as a result. On the other hand, averaging may reduce the amount of the index-linked interest you earn when the index rises either near the start or at the end of the term. Let's see how monthly averaging works. Let's say on a point-to-point basis, 1 year later, it ends exactly where it began. But with averaging, where it says it protects you, you write down where the S&P 500 is on your beginning date. Write it down on a sheet of paper. 12 months or 1 month later, on your month anniversary, you write it down again. At the end of the year, you have 12 figures written down. Add them all up, divide by 12, and you've got an average. That's how you can get a positive gain out of a sideways market. That's called monthly averaging. This is a brilliant guide, and all of these buyer's guides are just awesome. Now, here are the questions you should ask when shopping for an index annuity. Like, here's one: how long is the term? Is there a minimum participation rate? So there's always two rates in that as well. There's a current participation rate and a minimum participation rate the insurance company can drop down to. So does my contract have an interest rate cap? What is it? Does my contract have an interest rate floor? And what is it? These are great questions to ask. Final points to remember. Remember to read your annuity contract carefully when you receive it. I'm going to add a note here. In every state, it is law. When you ask for a sample policy, the agent is required to provide it to you at your request. That's a secret. You should ask for a sample policy. Ask your agent or the insurance company to explain anything you don't understand. If you have a specific complaint or can't get answers you need from the agent or the company, contact your state insurance department. Thank you for watching. I'm Jeff McLeod.